This lesson will show you how to determine the cost of inventory under the perpetual inventory system using the FIFO inventory costing method. Under the first in, first out, or FIFO inventory costing method, the first units purchased are assumed to be the first units sold to customers. It's also assumed that the ending inventory balance that has not been sold and remains in inventory at the end of the period is made up of the most recent or last items purchased. This is a logical assumption considering that the first items purchased are the first items sold. When the FIFO method is used in a perpetual inventory system or a continuous inventory system, the cost assigned to the sold units is based on the order in which the units were purchased. Therefore, the cost of merchandise sold is also calculated based on the order in which the units were purchased. FIFO is the most common inventory costing method used by companies. Grocery stores are a great example of a company that uses the FIFO method. They shelve milk or other perishable products based on the expiration dates. Products with earlier expiration dates are usually the earliest products purchased, so they are stocked in the front. Let's walk through an inventory costing problem using the perpetual FIFO method. Using the inventory data from item 127B that's provided in the chart, we will review the process of recording each transaction based on the perpetual FIFO costing method. The inventory record consists of 10 columns. The first column is used to record the date of each transaction. The next 3 columns, 2, 3, and 4, titled Quantity, Unit Cost, and Total Cost, are used to record the cost of new inventory being purchased. The middle 3 columns, 5, 6, and 7, also titled Quantity, Unit Cost, and Total Cost, are used to record the cost of merchandise sold each time a sale transaction occurs. The last 3 columns, 8, 9, and 10, also titled Quantity, Unit Cost, and Total Cost, are used to calculate the running inventory balance after each transaction. Now we will walk through the process of entering the transactions listed in the inventory chart into the inventory record. On January 1st, there is an opening inventory balance of 1,000 units with a $20 per unit cost. This opening balance must be entered in the inventory record. Since these units are carried forward from the last period, we do not enter anything in the 3 purchase columns or the 3 cost columns. The opening balance is entered in the last 3 columns where inventory balances are tracked. In the first row, enter January 1st in the date column. Then enter 1,000 in the top row of the quantity column. Finally, enter $20 in the top row of the unit cost column. For the last step, we need to calculate the total cost of the opening inventory by multiplying the 1,000 units by the $20 per unit cost. This amount, which should be $20,000, must be entered in the very last column titled Total Cost. On January 4th, the company sold 700 units at a selling price of $30 per unit. The first step is to enter the date, which is January 4th. Next, in the quantity column under Cost of Merchandise Sold, enter 700, which is the number of units sold. The next step is to enter the unit cost in the designated column under Cost of Merchandise Sold. The only units we have available to sell are the 1,000 units that carried over from the previous period. Therefore, the unit cost will be $20 because this is the cost of the 1,000 units we have in stock. Next, calculate the total cost by multiplying the 700 units by the $20 per unit cost, which is $14,000. Enter $14,000 in the total cost column under Cost of Merchandise Sold. Do not use the sale amount of $30 per unit as the cost. The $30 price is actually the selling price that the units were sold for. This actually represents the revenue earned by the sale, not the cost. The last step is to determine how much inventory remains after the sale. In the last 3 columns in the same row that the January 4th sale is entered, go to the last 3 columns and calculate the number of units remaining by subtracting 700 from 1,000, which should be 300. This is the number of units left and should be entered in the quantity column under inventory. The unit cost of $20 must be entered next. The $20 cost is used because that's the unit cost of the 1,000 units that were carried over from the previous period. The last step is to calculate the total cost of the remaining units by multiplying the 300 units by the $20 per unit cost, which should be $6,000. Enter $6,000 in the total cost column under inventory. On January 10th, the company purchased 500 more units at a cost of $22.40 per unit. The first step is to enter the January 10th date in the column. Enter 500 in the quantity column under purchases and enter $22.40 in the unit cost column under purchases. Then go ahead and multiply 500 by $22.40 to calculate the total cost for the new units, which should be $11,200. Enter this amount in the total cost column under purchases. The final step is to update the last three columns to reflect the new inventory balances. The first thing you need to do is bring the 300 units that we still have left from the starting inventory down. Enter the total number of units in the quantity column, enter the unit cost in the unit cost column, and then enter the total cost in the last column. The total should be $300, $22, and $6,000 respectively. The last step is to carry over the 500 units at $22.40 per unit and the total cost of $11,000 to the last three columns under inventory. This step is important because the inventory columns must show the number of units left in inventory and the cost of the units that remain in inventory. Do not add the 500 units and 300 units together. They must be listed separately because they were purchased on different days and at different unit costs. Let's look at one more transaction. On January 22nd, the company sold 360 units at a selling price of $30 per unit. Just like before, the first step is to enter January 22nd in the date column. Since we have two different groups of inventory in stock, we need to determine which group of inventory we will use first to complete the order. Since we are using the FIFO method, we need to sell the 300 units first because those were purchased first. However, we sold 360 units, but only 300 units are still in stock from the opening balance. Therefore, 300 units will come from the first group, and the remaining 60 units will come from the 500 units purchased on January 10th. Go to the cost of merchandise sold columns, and on the same row as the January 22nd date, enter 300 in the quantity column and $20 in the unit cost column. Calculate the total cost by multiplying 300 by $20, which should be $6,000. Enter this amount in the total cost column. Directly below the 300 units, enter 60 in the quantity column and $22.40 in the unit cost column. Now calculate the total cost by multiplying 60 by $22.40, which should be $1,344. Please note, the unit cost of $22.40 for the 60 units is based on the units used to fill the order. Since the 60 units are being filled from the 500 units that were purchased at a cost of $22.40 per unit, this is the cost we use for the 60 units. The last step is to update the last three columns of the report to reflect the new inventory balances after the sale. Prior to the sale, the inventory balance included 300 units at $20 per unit and 500 units at $22.40 per unit. When we filled this order, we sold all of the 300 units, so there are no units from that group left in inventory. However, we sold 60 of the 500 units, so there are 440 units left in inventory. Therefore, the 440 units that remain need to be entered in the quantity column under inventory. The unit cost of $22.40 needs to be entered in the unit cost column under inventory. And then the total cost of the remaining 440 units needs to be entered in the total cost column under inventory. The total cost should be $9,856, which is calculated by multiplying 440 by $22.40. Please walk through the rest of the transactions for this problem to ensure you fully understand the process. The problem is in the book on page 276.